Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week, I'm joined by Husky Harry, huggable homos who love film, to review a film, either current or classic, and talk about other movie adjacent items. Sometimes that's movie news. Sometimes it is a stuffed full of action week, and we don't do movie news. And this week is no different. So this week, we're going to be talking about War for the Planet of the Apes. So we'll definitely be dishing about those apes and what's going on in their world. Also, we're going to be talking about our top films of 2017 so far, because we're only 6.5-ish months into the year. Oscar season hasn't even hit yet. Dunkirk is coming out. We're going to see it this week. It may upend our list. I don't know, Jim, because we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, but we'll have to see. I'm excited.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to see what happens with these lists, but I'm excited to get started. But before we do, let me officially introduce you to my wonderful co-hosts, Jim Pugliafico. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, Brad, Jim, listeners. I'm pretty excited. This is one of my favorite episodes of the year, so ready to dive right in.
I'm ape signing. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna make like a Bad Will reference, but I feel like that's jumping like 30 minutes ahead in our show.
Ogan, that was totally taking me back to Congo, and I was channeling Amy. Does anybody remember?
Oh yeah, I remember
Congo.
Amy from Congo,
wow.
The Michael Crichton adaptation.
I was trying to call back to like another cool ape film, but whatever.
No. We got
a blast from the past.
We're right there with you. You're right there with Amy Good. Amy, bad gorilla bad. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Hey, we also want to say a quick hello to our friends in the live chat who are with us right now. Dan McCord is with us. And guys, Dan sent me a very sexy picture of himself laying in bed enjoying the show. So, Dan, welcome. I'll have to share that with Jim and Will. In a non-public setting. I can't screen share that photo, unfortunately, for everybody else, but I'll share that with you and Will. Also, hello to Weepin' Jay, who is with us in the live chat as well. Hello, WJ. I don't know your real name, but glad you're here.
Weepin' Jay.
Hey, chat boys.
Glad to have you guys hanging out with us live. For those of you who are listening on digital tape delay, you, of course, are missing the live discussion. That's okay. We know you like to save the show for your morning commute sometimes, so no worries. But hey, if you want to tell us your thoughts on War for the Planet of the Apes, or even share some of your top films of this year so far, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, where the conversation continues even after the show is done recording. So all of that said, blah, 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 Brad, stop talking. I want to go ahead and officially kick things off here and jump into our top films of 2017 so far. Jim, I have no idea what you might do for a sound drop for that segment. Maybe weave some trailers together. I don't know. I'm sure you'll come up with something great.
I'll try. If you've got any creative ideas that aren't too, technically involved, let me know. I'm open to ideas. So
if only some of the films that we've seen this year and that we liked and that we may discuss here in a few moments had really great soundtracks.
I don't know if that is even helpful, because I mean, all of the films this year have had terrible soundtracks, awful composers. I don't think we have any, wells.
Not an audio cue, not a good quote one,
not even trailers. None of the movies this year had trailers that we could use clips from. So,
Jim's like, okay, yeah, I got it, guys.
Yeah, no.
Hey.
Jim always does such a good job with them. I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about potentially maybe 9 more movies in our top 3 altogether, and so you could say we could stitch a bunch of trailers together. But typically, I like to sprinkle in some of the trailers, before we talk about as we talk about the movies.
Yeah.
So, what we do up front though for the segment Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe we can give you an also ran list, and maybe like you can do a couple audio clips from some of the ones that don't quite make our cut, just so that there's kind of like a little prelude to it. That way we don't spend a lot of time talking about them, but there's a couple audio
That's
drops.
a good point. Or maybe since we're kind of counting down our top films a little bit, you could throw in like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
I already got my idea. I'm done.
Oh, I'm excited. Jim's got it.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, want to give a quick shout out to Ryan, who just joined us in the chat. He says he just made it Indiana Jones style. Ryan, that was some impressive indie footwork. Nice job. Welcome. Glad to have you here with us.
Yeah, he was almost crushed by the boulder, but he made it out of the way just in time.
Almost.
To sit down with this episode. Perfect.
You know, most people in our community wouldn't mind being crushed by giant balls, Ryan. But, you know, hey, we understand if it's not your thing.
God, Brad.
Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and kick off our top films of 2017 so far. Will, if you don't mind, maybe you could give us a little bit of just insight. And Jim, you and I can kind of do the same thing just in terms of how you came up with your list. How do you make these determinations? But Will, why don't you go first and tell us a little bit what helped you to make your decision?
Absolutely. So this is always a difficult / ridiculously fun endeavor for me, because you get to take all of these films that you enjoyed and think back on them and sort of relive them and re-experience them and slowly come up with the list of 3 that we're going to talk about on the episode, which means that some really amazing films get pushed to the side. I have a very, very solid top 13 right now.
Yeah.
And so I went from that list down to about 7, down to 5, and then I agonized and stared at my screen all day. No joke. I've pulled up, I always pull up the behind the scenes. I always pull up the IMDb for the whatever movies we're going to talk about, just in case I need to remember an actor on the fly. I had 4 films pulled up as we started this episode because I was still sort of whittling down the 3 and the 4 slot as we went live. So there's that.
Yeah, I know that feeling of like, I got down to 14 or 15 today, and I'm like, oh, I know there's someone here I can probably call out, but getting down to 3 is a real challenge. I mean, we have this problem every time we do these lists, but 3 is really, really tough. Even halfway through the year when we haven't seen, we've only seen half as many films as we're going to see through the year. And just narrowing it down to 3 is crazy, because there's some amazing films movies that really made an impact on us that are not going to be talked about on this, unfortunately.
Oh,
Yeah. It's one of those things where, obviously some really good films have come out so far this year, and kind of the approach I took was sort of categorizing a little bit, because it's just too hard otherwise. I'm like, okay, if I have a superhero film at all, I can only have 1 superhero film on the list, even though maybe I liked more than 1. If I have horror films that I really liked, and I liked multiple so far this year, I can only have 1 on my, you know what I mean? So
or documentaries. Yeah, I get
you. Or documentaries are right. So I tried to keep it from being 3 superhero movies or, whatever. So I think that actually helped me in a way get a more sort of diverse spread. But it will be interesting to see, because one of my traditions is before we do our top 10 of the year next January or whatever, I always go back and re-listen to this episode and think about our list. And then I like to see, okay, did this change? Did some movie we were totally gaga about get totally fucking blown away? And then we even forget to mention it in honorable mentions or something in our January episode. So I'm excited to see where things shake out from now until January, but that's a long ways away still.
Are we going in order, by the way?
3, 2, 1 per person.
That's kind of up to you. I mean, if you have a stack ranking and you want to follow it, feel free. Because I just kind of picked categories. I don't know if mine necessarily fit into a 3, 2, 1, but you do you, boo. Whatever is comfy.
All right.
Follow your bliss.
All right.
Makes perfect sense. So yeah, it's great, because I know that some of these films, and I've seen this in the past, our number 1s and 2s right now maybe our 7s and 9s and 14s at the end of the year, which means I can't wait until October, November, as we hit prestige film season. There's going to be a lot of amazing films that are that I can't wait to see, actually, that are going to upend this list, and that is such a wonderful feeling.
Well, let's dive right into our list and get the discussion going. Will, what is the first movie on your list you want to talk about? Not necessarily your number 3. I don't know what your system is, but where do you want to start?
I am using a stack ranking just because it helps me organize kind of my thoughts as I go through here. And I have to start with sort of a disclaimer / apology to Jim. I had promised him via Twitter that we would talk about a specific film, and that film being Raw, that film having now been bumped to my number 4 slot, so we'll have to talk about it another time, because my number 3 film of the year so far is Baby Driver, and I needed to make sure that that got talked about in this episode. I have a feeling it still might, but yeah, what's there to say about Baby Driver that we haven't already said in our kind of lengthy review on this? This is an Edgar Wright film where he gets to take all of his directorial style and panache, while also divorcing himself from sort of the straight up comedy that he's more well known for with some of his other films. He gets to take an extraordinary cast, people like John Hamm and Kevin Spacey, and the incredibly talented Ansel Elgort, who is the lead here as Baby. He gets to blend that with brilliant car chase scenes and, of course, the musical soundtrack, which is the rhythm and the lifeblood of this entire film. The fact that he gets such solid performances out of so many different people on this cast, from both the experienced people and from the inexperienced comparatively, shows us that this is a guy that knows how to work with his actors, knows what his script is, and knows what his vision is. I loved Baby Driver. I've seen it twice. I will be seeing it many, many more times to come. It's a crowd pleaser, and it's one that I think is kind of infinitely fun. So Baby Driver is my number 3, and it's a very solid, happy number 3.
All right. That movie may or may not come up on another list, potentially.
Yeah, it may or may not come up again.
I don't know.
And again, I don't know.
I'll be interested in hearing.
Maybe so. Will, definitely a good pick, though. We may have more conversation later, but Baby Driver is starting to pick up a lot of steam in terms of the buzz that it's getting. We talked about it on the show, but the unfortunate title, I mean, the title's great. It works in the context of the movie, but not having seen the movie, it sounds like a daddy daycare movie. So a lot of people, like, we were at a bear pool party, like, just, I don't know, a week and a half ago or something. And like, everyone was like, we brought up Baby Driver, and everyone's like, isn't that the one with like Kevin James, and he's like driving a carpool for kids or something?
You know,
it's like, no.
I had a conversation with some people, and they said, "Wait, isn't that the one where Alec Baldwin is like the CGI baby?" And so it's the same thing. Like, it's a title that just sort of blurs into the background. I think it's a great title from a film perspective, but from a marketing perspective, maybe less so.
Indeed. Yeah. Hey, hello. Big hello and hugs to our very own Magic Mike Lovins, who's in the chat with us tonight. I was talking to him moments before the show, and he was in a bathtub sending me pictures of him in the bath. So, Mike, thank you. I have a lot of pictures to share with you guys, Jim and Will. I need to get on that. I'll make good on that promise. But, Mike, thanks for taking time away from your luxurious bath to join us. Glad to have you here. So let's move on down the list. Jim, what's the first movie from your list you want to talk about?
I'm going to talk about a movie that actually just got released this week, but I saw it back at South by Southwest, and I know I've talked about this movie. It is a documentary called Chasing Coral. It just got released, I think, on Netflix this week. So if you got Netflix, I think you can go watch this movie under your prescription. Wow. under your, hey, movies are a drug for me. So, like, prescription, yeah, it all works.
Is it are movies medicinal, Jim? Are they medicinal?
Movies are medicinal. Yes.
Yeah,
Although you should, You don't need a prescription to see movies, right? You just got to have the feeling, and you can self-medicate anytime you want. Anyway, Chasing Coral, this is kind of an environmental documentary by a director, Jeff Orlowski, who did a movie called Chasing Ice a few years ago, which was about the receding, ice caps of the Earth and the receding, ice caps of the Earth and due to global warming. And there are other effects of global warming, and one of them is a phenomenon called coral bleaching. And this is happening throughout the world at some of these major coral reefs, like the Great Barrier Reef, which is really one of the wonders of the world, is being affected by this in a very dramatic way. And this movie shows that. And not only that, but this fantastic underwater photography here. But it's a story. It's a story about these people who want to document this coral bleaching. There's not much that these people can do about saving the coral reefs. That's up to us as a bigger environmental community to think about what we can do to reverse the effects of global warming. If that is, you believe in global warming, of course, but which I do, by the way. But it's also a story about these scientists and just concerned people who are in love with the world and the ocean. One of them is this guy, Zachary Rago, who's in this movie. Fantastic. Like, these people aren't playing parts. They're their real selves, but some of the passion that they have for, being stewards of the earth really was an emotional kick for me. And I love this movie. I can't wait to watch it on Netflix this week again. It's called Chasing Coral. I know it's a documentary and it sounds really kind of dry and boring and preachy, but it's not. It's kind of a slap to the face. It's a wake-up call. It's not Al Gore telling us what we need to do, to reverse the effects of global warming. These are real people down on the reef showing us what is going on and the effects and, some of the causes for that. So check out this movie. It's called Chasing Coral. Seen it yet, but Will, I don't know if you have yet.
Yeah, we saw it.
That's
were we in the same screen? I don't know if we were in the same screen, but
I don't think we were.
Yeah, we both saw it at South by, and it is. You're absolutely right. Like, it didn't make my list for this episode because 3, but it is for me easily the best documentary I've seen this year. Like, if we were doing a documentary only episode, I could just talk about that one and be happy. I think that if it's got such beautiful imagery, so I think that's a draw. Like, if you just want to see some gorgeous shots, this is the great film for that. But also, the message to it is very palpable, and it's also very accessible. Like, I think some of these, like the Earth is Doomed type films can feel a little like off-putting, but the passion of these people comes straight through the screen, and it will invigorate anyone who watches it. So I love this choice.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, I'm glad. Like I said, Brad, I can't wait till we watch it together.
Yeah, definitely want to check it out. I know that Kristen Bell did a song that was used in the film. So,
okay.
Yeah, I got a press release on the music video for that song. So I actually went out and watched the video today.
Okay. Great.
And really, really cool song. So I'm definitely interested in checking out the film for sure. Believe it or not, oh my gosh, we have like 10 minutes left for this whole segment, and we're
man.
only 2 movies in. Oh my god. So I'm gonna go really quick on mine. We'll kind of speed it up a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
The first movie I want to talk about, we talked about on the show before, so I won't go too deep into it. But it's a movie that kind of took me by surprise storm, and that is a movie directed and written by Jordan Peele called Get Out. It's kind of a is it a horror movie? Is it a suspense movie? Is it like a tongue-in-cheek look at race in America movie? I think it's all of those things in a way. And I think that's what makes this film so phenomenally successful. And what's really interesting to me is, seeing the trailers for this movie, I've always been fascinated by like the idea of hypnotism, not so much like talk show hypnotism where like they make 8 people like cluck like chickens or whatever, but just like, what can this really do to the human brain? And I think this movie kind of takes an interesting crack at that in a way that I enjoyed a lot. So I have some issues with the film. I think the ending kind of pushes out a little bit. It's I don't know. I can love a movie, but still have criticism, I think. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites this year.
Good choice, man. I was hoping somebody would hit on it. See, that's the thing. Like when you're making this list, you're like the ones you have to take off your list. You kind of secretly hope that like one of the other guys has it on their list, so at least it can get kind of, the praise that it deserves. And Get Out is definitely one of those movies that I think deserves that praise.
Yeah, if we all picked the exact same 3 films, this would be kind of a boring episode. So I didn't pick Get Out, but I'm glad that you did because it's solid.
Indeed. Hey, just want to say hi real quick to Steve in the chat. Steve, who we just got to meet at Bigger Vegas a week and 2 days ago for the first time. Steve, good to see you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Will, we are back up to you, my friend. What is your next film?
So the reason that I did not talk about Raw today is because I watched a movie earlier today that shot to the #2 spot on my list. It's a film that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. David Lowery is the director. A24 has put it out, and it's a movie called A Ghost Story. This movie stars Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. Casey Affleck, the basic story of it, and I'm going spoiler light because I don't know who hasn't seen it yet. This is a young couple that's in love. One of them passes away, returns as the white sheeted ghost that you see in the trailers, and sort of tries to reconnect and follow around the places where he was in life. This is a gorgeous movie. It is it's a very slow-paced movie, so I don't think that, if you're looking for kind of a whiz-bang cinematic experience, it's not going to be that. But it is beautiful. It is heavy. It is the type of film that makes you think afterwards. There is a scene just involving pie, where I literally cried more during this one scene than I have ever cried at any one movie in my life. Like, it was that intense of an experience for me. So A Ghost Story. It is out in theaters right now, but I think it's still expanding. It's very it's like a Terrence Malick film if kind of the extra stuff was weighted away and kind of the cool parts of the kind of the ethereal experience were whittled down and focused. It's a Malick film for people that don't like Malick.
So Will, you said you cried at the pie scene. Now I haven't seen this movie yet, but I've heard other people mention a pie scene. How hungry were you when you cried at the pie scene? That's what I want.
Not at all. I wasn't
hungry.
No, in fact, it kind of took my appetite away, not because it was gross or anything like that. It's not that type of movie, but just one of those things where it's just I'm too emotional for food. Later on, I will have all of the emotions and need all of the food. But right now, I just couldn't.
Pure emotion. Yeah, this is one that's on my list too, Will, and you're kind of teasing me here because we can't see this movie yet. This is only very limited release. Is that right?
I think it just started limited a week ago.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, it's on the list, and we will be able to, who knows, maybe it'll be in the running for our end of the year list too.
Either way, I look forward to talking about it with you guys.
Indeed. All right. Jim, what's next on your list?
My next on my list is one that took me completely by surprise. And as you guys know, I've mentioned it before. It's why I love to go to the movies. I love movies that kind of sweep me off my feet. And one of those was called Your Name. This movie was released actually in 2016, but I'm counting it as a 2017 movie. I just love this movie. This is a kind of trading places in an anime world kind of movie. Super emotional. It's got some really strong emotional beats. A movie that you don't know where it's going, and at the outset, you're kind of a little disoriented, but once you click in with the characters in this movie, you're fully on board. I love the music in this movie. The soundtrack I really loved. So it got great animation. It's a movie by a guy named Makoto Shinkai. It is I think it's Japanese. Is that right, Will?
Yeah, that's right.
Japanese movie. Yeah, man, it's called Your Name. Check it out. I think you might be able to get it on VOD at this point, but I'm not sure. I think I did see it pop up on VOD. It didn't make a lot of splash when it came out, except in film circles. But this one's a solid number 2 on my list. Your Name.
Man, Jim, such a great choice. That movie just missed my list. It's definitely one of my honorable mentions, I guess, because there's just not room when you can only pick 3.
I know.
But that's another movie that has a phenomenal score. Some really cool like pop songs as well that I enjoy a lot. In fact, the other day I'm just listening to music in my car, and like the poppy song that plays, well, I don't want to spoil, but like the main poppy song came on, and I was like, yes, fuck yes, this movie, I loved this movie. So Jim, totally co-signed on that choice.
Yeah, ditto. Like this one was one of my last minute cuts. I'm reading the manga right now, and sort of perching on Amazon. I didn't see a Blu-ray release for it yet, and that's sort of disappointing. I want a Blu-ray release. I think I saw like an import one, but I don't want to do an import one because, you know, region lock and all that.
Hey guys, real quick, we've got some folks that are sharing some of their top films in the chat here. I'm just going to call them out. Some folks are saying Baby Driver, Split, A Dog's Purpose, Spider-Man 2, Homecoming, John Wick 2. Really, really great picks, you guys, in the live chat. I think some of those films may come up at some point, but even if they don't, I think I'd co-sign every one of them except A Dog's Purpose because I didn't see it. I was afraid of the tears that I would shed, so I avoided it. But
truly, because it wasn't called A Cat's Purpose. That's why.
Well, there's that too.
But they did make that movie. It was just called Petty.
Well,
that's true.
And that movie was on my honorable mentions list.
Which was a very good list. It's a very good movie, yeah.
So my next pick is a movie that a lot of folks have been talking about, pretty timely, directed by Patty Jenkins. Of course, I'm speaking of Wonder Woman, story by Zack Snyder. So I told you guys earlier, like, so many like really good superhero movies have come out so far this year. And I was like, God, do I go with Logan or do I go with Wonder Woman? I can only pick one superhero movie from my list. And as much as I liked Logan, Wonder Woman really won out for me. Gal Gadot, that is the official pronunciation of her name as per her interview on the Jimmy Kimmel Show last year. So I'm running with it. And Chris Pine had really great chemistry. I think they just made for really engaging scene and character work. And I loved seeing Wonder Woman on the live action screen, not just for the action-y stuff. And I'll admit the action-y stuff was cool, but like it's not where my main love for this film comes from. It was more like the tender, like Wonder Woman, like caring for humanity and the bad choices they make, sort of gravitas in this film. And, you know, I don't know if anyone has like yet to see Wonder Woman. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's one scene, I know you guys know right what I'm talking about, a certain battlefield bridging two camps. That just slays me. It absolutely slays me. I want to see this movie again, but I'm afraid to see it again for the bawling, ugly crying that I will be doing in that scene. So maybe we'll save that for Blu-ray and I can cry alone at home into some ice cream or something. But Wonder Woman, absolutely fantastic film for me.
Great pick, Brad. I was hoping, again, this is one of those ones I was hoping somebody would pick because it's like number 4 or 5 on my list. And you know, you guys know me, I'm not a superhero guy. So to have a movie like Wonder Woman this high on my list, I think for me anyway, says something about the quality of that movie, the character that they created in Wonder Woman, especially. I'm a character guy, not a plot guy, even though, yeah, the movie has a lot of plot, but I think it really gets the character. This is a character I really loved as far as any of the superheroes, not just because she's a woman, but because she's a character who really has goodness in her, and that comes out, and that's what I like about her. So yeah, a great pick, Brad. I love Wonder Woman.
Plus, she's possibly saving not just a franchise, but like a whole company, like cinematically. I've been ridiculously critical of the DC movies because they've been, in my estimation, dog shit. So the fact that Wonder Woman came out and wasn't just like better than those, but was like legitimately good, was such a weight off my shoulders. Like I've hated being in this boat where like I enjoyed one type of superhero movie better than the other.
Yeah.
So this sort of I felt like this sort of re-leveled the playing field for me.
Yeah, and Will, I think you're not alone. Some of the comments in the live chat, people are going crazy for Wonder Woman. And yeah, I think it just does sort of a lot of level resetting for these DC films. And we can only hope that they learn some valuable lessons from Wonder Woman and carry them forward into Justice League. They probably won't, but one can hope. Anyway, back to the top of our order, final round. Will, what is the last film on your list?
I bet Jim can guess what it is, just because I feel like I've talked about this one quite a bit. My number one film of the year is this movie called Personal Shopper. This movie absolutely blew my socks off. It's directed by this guy named Olivier Assayas. He gave us a movie that I also quite enjoyed a few years back called The Clouds of Sils Maria. Personal Shopper stars Kristen Stewart. Is this she's a personal shopper in Paris for this rich celebrity activist type person. She's also and this is really weird, but bear with me on this. She and her twin brother were mediums for ghosts before her twin brother died, and so while she's there, she's dealing with trying to reconnect with her brother from the other side, while also sort of dealing with this complication to her life in terms of like, you know, this personal, you know, this person that she has to serve. This is one of the most complex and nuanced films I've probably seen in a long time. It's like when you have an extremely delicate dessert, one of those ones where you just sort of like take a little nibble and savor, as opposed to just shoveling the whole piece of pie or ice cream or whatever it is into your face hole. I found myself thinking about this movie more so than any movie that I've seen this year. And I've seen a lot of great movies since then. I come back and I contemplate like, okay, what did this mean? Or what happened here? All of this with... Again, I think Kristen Stewart's performance in this is one of the hands down best of the year. She is just so phenomenal. And I think anyone that has only seen her work in Twilight and hasn't seen this or Clouds of Sils Maria or Still Alice or Camp X-Ray is doing themselves a discredit by not watching one of the like the blossoming of one of the best talents of this generation. So it's called Personal Shopper. It is a mystery. It is maybe a bit of a thriller. It's a paranormal film. It's also a complex drama. It's all of these different things mashed up into something that kind of defies genre.
Yeah, well, this one, I got to see this one, I think on a business trip one time. But yeah, this you mentioned it. This film it didn't quite make my list, but it has a lot of layers. It's very complex, as you said. I want to say very complex. That makes it sound like it's hard to understand. No. It's not. It just has several layers that mesh well together. I think Kristen Stewart was definitely worth seeing in this one. I definitely want to see what she does next. I want to see if she can kind of even break the mold a little bit more. Break that Twilighty mold a little bit more. But I liked Personal Shopper. It's like I said, it's got those layers that if you don't like one layer, you can maybe enjoy it on another. So definitely a good pick, Will.
So I haven't seen it, but all this talk of layers, I've got to ask, is it layers like an onion or layers like a parfait?
It's a little bit of both. It's an onion parfait.
It's definitely got onion in there. It's not as sweet as a parfait. But yeah, it's probably, I'd say it's more like an onion, but that's just me.
Yeah, but onions have layers.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Thank you, Shrek. All right, Jim, what's the last movie on your list?
Last movie on my list is a movie we've already talked about. Thanks, Will. It's Baby Driver. But just because Will talked about it doesn't mean I'm not going to, mention it. I could have replaced it with probably some other movie in my top three, but this movie deserves to be in the top three. It is the best movie I think I've seen this year so far. This movie has everything. This movie has a fantastic soundtrack. It's got a great visual style and kind of a rhythm to it, especially in some scenes. That rhythm like reaches such heights that you're like, oh my God, like this is an amazing cinematic experience. It's got really great performances, some hammy performances, but that they work. And I mean ham by John Hamm.
John Hamm.
John Hamm. I mean, even everybody's hamming it up in this movie. You got, Jamie Foxx hamming it up. You've got, I mentioned John Hamm, Kevin Spacey. What's his name from The Walking Dead? John
Bernthal.
Help me out.
John Bernthal.
John Bernthal. And a great breakout performance. Some fantastic like practical action car driving stunts in this movie that were like really get your adrenaline going. It's got everything. I think it's almost like the perfect summer movie. It would be the perfect summer blockbuster movie if like superhero movies hadn't taken that spot from movies like this. But I love Baby Driver. If you guys haven't seen it yet, go out and see it. I want to hear what you think.
So Jim, I'm just going to piggyback on you because my last film is Baby Driver, and I love that this film came up in all of our lists. I think that says a lot about the film itself. Will and Jim, you guys have both pretty much brought up everything I can think of to bring up about this movie. I guess the only other thing that I would say is I've typically not been like an Edgar Wright film fan. I'm trying to think back. I mean, I liked Scott Pilgrim, but like the others, like what was it at World's End or something?
The Coronado trilogy. You got World's End. Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, I'm gonna get killed for this, but I didn't like Shaun of the Dead. I didn't like Hot Fuzz. I didn't like A World's End. So going into Baby Driver, I'm just like, oh Jesus, do we have to see this movie? Are you kidding me? And I was hooked right from the word go. Title aside, which we talked about earlier, this film just does so much. And typically, I'm not an action movie kind of guy either. Like it just, the more it's almost like there's a proportional formula. Like the more action there is, the more sleepy I get, which probably sounds weird, but like I think this film had a great balance of the action, but also some really intricate character stuff with the character of Baby himself. I don't want to spoil anybody, but of course, Baby is like taking care of a step parent or a foster parent. I'm still not quite sure. And of course, Baby's relationship with Cinderella, working at the diner, and there's a lot of intricate things that are going on with the interpersonal relationships, even between Baby and Kevin Spacey. And for me, like that relationship was like at the heart of this film. I loved watching the two character arcs kind of intertwine and seeing where they go. And having seen this movie just after finishing like the latest season of House of Cards, it was a little hard for me to separate like Frank Underwood from Kevin Spacey in this film. But I still enjoyed it quite a bit. And Steve in the chat says, "How dare you, Brad?" Dan says, "Brad, you're dead to me." Wow, I'm getting a lot of like hate shade in the chat. You guys,
I think they might be eating too much of the Coronado. I'm just
William
saying.
says, "But Brad, Nick Frost." Yeah, it's great. Like there was an exact moment where chat turned on you.
Well, hey, I will be brave and stand up for how I feel. Nick Frost is super hot, especially in that photo from a couple years ago where he's in like a leather vest with like a harness and like a leather hat. That was awesome.
Did you see the promotional one where he's just in his tidy whities and
I did. I totally did. But that doesn't redeem the movies for me personally. But if you guys want to like come at me, bro, and like cut me at an event or something, I just ask that you use a spoon. That's fine. All right. But no knives, just spoons. Anyway,
Brad, you talked about you're not an action movie. I think your action movie, especially car action movie propensity, went up a lot when you upgraded from the Taurus to the Mustang. I'm just saying.
Oh, did it?
I have a feeling that had something to do with it.
It probably does. I mean, like, our Dunkin' Donuts is like less than a mile from our house, but I like to gun it from our house to the Dunkin' if I can. Like,
oh, wow, Brad.
So maybe there's truth to that, Jim.
Hard turn, slam the handbrake, and just like slide sideways right up to the window.
I do. I'm drifting into Dunkin' Donuts.
Get it, Braddy Driver.
Yeah. Totally. It's like Fast and the Furious Dunkin' Drift.
Well, Will, when you say Braddy Driver, when you spell that out, it looks like Brady Driver. So I don't know if that
does. And it sounds like Bratty Driver. So we're gonna have to find another do it. Yeah.
Oh goodness. They're saying in the chat, Dan says that he could think of some ways to make it up to everybody.
Okay,
You
Dan.
know what? How about you guys make it up to me for being brave and stating my opinion? Why don't you come service me in my opinion? for
Oh,
once?
watch out. Watch out. You got his Dom side coming out.
All right. All right. Less leather, Brad.
In any event, all right. So we've got our lists. What about some quick honorable mentions? Just real fast, rapid fire. What do you guys got?
Yeah, for me, just kind of flying through the rest of my honorable mentions. I had Raw at number 4, Logan at number 5, It Comes at Night number 6, Your Name at 7, I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore number 8, The Beguiled at 9, and like 18 films fighting for the number 10 slot.
Yeah, I had. Let's see. I had The Hero, starring Sam Elliott. Which is also on coming out now. This might be a little cheat too. It's actually a 2016 movie, but we saw it in 2017. 20th Century Women. I really love that movie. The Red Turtle, another one that we got to see in 2017, an animated, kind of an animated fable almost. And I'm going to pick one more. John Wick 2, another action movie that I thought was really solid this year. And I know some of the guys in the chat mentioned that earlier, but that one deserves an honorable mention.
Indeed.
What do you got, Brad?
So for me, just some of these we've already talked about. Your Name, fucking incredible. Just barely missed the list. Will, you mentioned Ketty. I typically do not like documentaries, but put cats in a documentary and I'm interested. So that was really fantastic. Logan was a great movie. Just Wonder Woman just barely beat it out. Split, which we didn't really talk about. I really loved Split. And then John Wick 2, another action movie that I didn't expect to maybe love as much as I did. The original John Wick was really great, but I really liked the second one too. So definitely, man, guys, we're halfway through the year. We've had some really, really incredible flicks come out so far.
Yeah.
Woo.
Especially after what felt like kind of like a really crappy couple of months, sort of like April, May-ish, and then all of a sudden, like June comes out, and we have our Baby Driver and our Wonder Woman, and just some of the movies we've seen more recently, and it's been uplifting. It's like, okay, all right, 2017 has arrived, and I'm good with my list.
Indeed. All right. Well, guys, we have a movie to discuss, but before we do that, I just want to throw in a few more call outs from the chat. Magic Mike Levins on his list says The Mummy, The Circle, Baywatch. Yes, I don't know that I agree with The Mummy and The Circle, but Baywatch definitely was a lot of fun for me.
I think I think Mike might be doing a different list.
Really? I don't
You
know.
think he's working on? He might be.
No,
Are you yanking us around, Mike? Because I'm gonna have to come and make it up for you.
Hey, so Steve has a very serious question for us. Why not Guardians of the Galaxy 2? Didn't make any of our lists, not even honorable mentions. Real quick, why is that? And then we're gonna segue away.
Really, just go ahead.
I was gonna say it almost did. I was when I said there were like a bunch of movies fighting for my number 10, I looked at my list and I had The Hero and Guardians of the Galaxy 2 in my 10 and 11 slots, and I couldn't decide, so I just didn't mention them. But yeah, it's I'm probably gonna get pilloried for this, but I actually liked it as a film even a little better than Wonder Woman. But which I loved. I loved Wonder Woman, but it's been a good year for superhero movies for me.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Guardians enough. There was some really strong stuff in there, but I felt that there was some stuff that kind of kept it further down on my list, probably around 15, 16 or so on my list. I did consider it, but it just didn't. It doesn't crack the quality of the films that I have in like my top 5 or 6. So I did enjoy it. We saw it twice, didn't we? See that twice?
We did see it twice. Yeah,
we saw it twice. So I saw it enough to like. I liked it enough to see it twice, but just didn't really make my list.
Mm. And for me, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was pretty much a snooze fest. I had to see it twice just to confirm. You guys are going to cut me with spoons anyway, so I'm okay with saying it. It wasn't anywhere near as fun as the first film for me. The soundtrack had a couple of standouts, but I'm trying to think of the songs on the list right now, and I can only think of like two, so mostly forgettable. And I feel like even though there was some brilliance with the like the rocket stuff and Yondu, outside of that, like the Kurt Russell, Chris Pratt shit, I was just like over it. So I guess it was entertaining, but didn't make my list. So sorry, guys.
Fair enough.
Come at me with your nerd pitchforks.
We
said it would be boring if we had the same lists, right? So that holds for our also Rens too.
Indeed. All right. Well, guys, we do have a whole movie to discuss, so we're going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit and talk about War for the Planet of the Apes. Before I do that, because we've got like 20 people hanging out with us live tonight, if you are new to the show, first, welcome. Glad to have you here. And B, we're following a format where we talk about the movie of the week, spoiler-free for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we give you fair warning before we take you to Spoiler Pound Town. So if you haven't seen War for the Planet of the Apes yet, maybe you're on the fence, you kind of want to know our opinion, we will definitely let you know if we think it's worth checking out or not before we go into spoilers. So you don't have to step away quite yet. We'll let you know when. But guys, all of that said, here we go. Our discussion of War for the Planet of the Apes. All right, so Jim, spoiler-free, of course. If you don't mind, give us the basic setup for this film, and whether you would go see it in theaters, rent it, VOD it, skip it, where do you come down?
Yeah, so we're talking about War for the Planet of the Apes. This is the third movie in this new reboot prequel series of films, Apes films. Of course, we started with Rise of the Planet of the Apes in 2011, then on to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes in 2014, and now on to War for the Planet of the Apes. And I think it's known or agreed that this series seems to like come in chronological order, like story chronological order before the original movies that started in 1968 with Planet of the Apes, starring Charlton Heston. A lot of famous quotes and lines from that movie and scenes. And that's one interesting story. I actually remember seeing that movie at 8 years old at a drive-in the summer that it came out and being like mesmerized by I'll just say minor spoilers for the movie, like Charlton Heston, and it starts out in space and they crash land. They're on some kind of mission from Earth. They crash land on this planet that they don't realize it's Earth at first, and they encounter this species of apes that's evolved. And I was blown as a kid. I'm like, I had never seen anything like that. All the prosthetic stuff that they did for the, it probably looks like crap today, but it was astounding for 1968. And the story, like the shock at the end, like, oh my God, you don't find out that it's Earth until the very end of the movie, right? When, that we have that famous scene with the Statue of Liberty and all that. It was really a mind blower for an 8-year-old. But anyway, there were 5 original movies back in the 60s and 70s. There was one Tim Burton Planet of the Apes movie in 2001. And then these 3 that started in 2011. So I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of this movie. After the apes suffer unimaginable losses, Caesar wrestles with his darker instincts and begins his own mythic quest to avenge his kind. Very vague plot synopsis there, which is cool. We'll get into more in spoilers, of course. This one's directed by Matt Reeves, who did direct Dawn, but he didn't direct the first one, Rise. This one stars Andy Serkis. I think he might be the only actor. I'm not sure if that's true or not. He's one of the few actors that I think has been in all 3 movies. And he plays Caesar, in this movie. Woody Harrelson is in this as the protagonist. Steve Zahn makes an appearance in this as an ape called Bad Ape, which is a pretty wonderful character. I like this movie. This movie, and here's why I liked it. It dared to be different than the first two movies. This movie turned into a really, at least for the first two acts, what I thought was a really great character drama, with kind of this conflict between apes and humans as its backdrop, and it's, that drove the story. But the way we get to know the Caesar character here is phenomenal. There's some amazing character work, and a lot of the CGI special effects stuff that they did, stop motion or not stop motion, but like motion capture that they did for this, is like, it's mind blowing, the detail and the realistic look of these apes and Caesar. Like, there's no way, like, you looked at that and you're like, I'm trying to find out where this looks like CGI, and you can't. It looks like a real creature, a real animal. And I love that about the movie, because there's so many facial expressions. As I said, it's a character drama. So these characters are emoting and responding to each other, and it's astounding at what they did. There was tons of really tight close-ups in this movie. I don't know if you guys noticed that, especially in the first two acts. And I love that about this movie. To me, the movie didn't stick the landing. It kind of got a little too bloated when the plot really kicked in. When Woody Harrelson, as the protagonist, comes into the picture, I think the movie starts to lose its steam. And there's a whole section, kind of end of the second act, beginning of the third act, which I think is really too long and makes the movie feel long and bloated. But I still like the movie for what it did, and what it what it was successful at doing in the first two acts, and how it set up this drama. I just wish it was a little shorter and a little tighter in that section. But I like this movie, and I recommend seeing this movie on a big screen. I can't recommend any 3D. We didn't see it in 3D, but I would see it on a big screen. It's a visual movie, and I think it should be seen that way.
So, Jim, definitely a big recommend from you, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have to echo that recommend. Maybe not as big as your recommend. We all know your recommend is bigger than my recommend, but there's still nice size recommends. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I think I have to take points down, though, for the length of the film. I feel like in this movie's like fourth or fifth out of 7 acts, it just really gets like bogged the fuck down. Like, it just like almost literally gets stuck in the mud for a good 25 minutes without a lot of forward progress. So I think maybe some tighter editing, maybe just trimming that down a bit could have really helped out there. But Jim, you mentioned the visuals with the apes in particular. Caesar, I've always been impressed with the CGI that they do for Caesar. One of my complaints with the first two movies, though, is that some of the other apes don't get near the same amount of like bang for the buck when it comes to how much money they're pumping into the CGI. In Rise and Dawn, some of the background apes look a little like hinky jinky with like how they're moving and stuff. And this was the first time I felt like they really hit it right, like firing on all cylinders universally with all of the apes shown. And it's interesting because there are times where like, the apes are like working together to like build something, or, I don't want to spoil anything, but like, it's just like, I'm thinking to myself, like, how did they get apes to like stack rocks like that? That's interesting. And then I'm like, oh, right. CGI. Okay. So I really like that they put as much time and detail into the apes as they did. I also really liked Woody Harrelson in this movie. He is not someone that I typically enjoy. I just don't. I don't know why he doesn't resonate with me. Maybe I watched too much Cheers when I was growing up, and that's colored my thinking. I don't know. Or maybe it was the Hunger Games. Could be that too. But I liked him here. He was sort of a believable military commander, and you know, it did get a little hammy without the John Hamm at one point, but overall, I think he did a great job here. So this is a big recommend for me. I'm anxious to talk through some things and spoilers, specifically regarding sort of the holdover elements from the evil ape in the second movie and what's going on in the third. But 2 recommends so far. Will, where do you come in?
Yeah, for this one, I mean, I'm gonna come down much lower than the two of you, but I guess I would say I still kind of liked it. Like, you know, like I'm on the like side of it. It's just this one had some problems that the other ones didn't have narratively that were really, really hard for me to ignore. You mentioned the runtime. This movie does not earn its 2 hours and 20 minutes. There is easily 30 or 40 minutes of just filler in this movie. And if this movie needed to be like kind of a tight, you know, hour 45 to tell the story it was trying to tell. I think that the real strength of this movie, as probably I could say is the strength of the previous two, is with Andy Serkis and the character of Caesar. One of the more underrated performers that we have working right now. I was watching some of the motion cap stuff that they did for him, like kind of like some shots where they had it just him in his motion capture versus the CGI. And it's not just a guy in green spandex and little ping pong balls like dancing in front of a screen like we think about with motion capture. All of those like little like, you know, little slight eye raises and like kind of looks to the side, like all of the nuance in Caesar's expressions are from facial mapping from Andy Serkis. As close as you could say, that is Andy Serkis on screen. And he absolutely steals the show as he did in the previous ones. There are problems. The third act, I think, is a complete mess. There is, at the same time, there's both too much and not enough happening in that entire stretch of movie. This film also does, and I won't say who he is now, but this film, for me, has introduced probably the most Jar Jar Binksy character since Jar Jar Binks itself. Like completely tonally dissonant with the rest of the film, and completely took me out of any of the moments that excited me. I will trash that character when we get to spoilers, but I won't say anything else about them now. The Woody Harrelson stuff was fine. I think he did a great job with the material. I think the material kind of petered out on him before he could really have a satisfying arc. I just think that this was a film that had so many good things going for it, and it didn't capitalize on as many of them as I would like. If we were just reviewing the first third of this movie, I would say get your ass out of the and go see it right now. I think that setup is brilliant, but I just don't think it's not just that it doesn't nail the landing. Like it's not even near the landing strip for me. So maybe a soft recommend, but there's other things I'd say go see instead.
All right. So we've kind of covered all ends of the recommend spectrum. Before we switch to spoilers, I wanted to ask you guys, what did you think of Caesar's Palace made of wood and waterfalls?
Wow.
We got in the car. We got our snacks. We got our drinks. We made sure that we had all of our. We went to the bathroom first, and then we took the long drive for that joke.
This is the downside of having a movie that's too long, because it gives Brad time to come up with these puns.
So no joke, seriously, and we'll talk about it in spoilers. But like, the apes are like doing their thing, and it occurred to me. So movie, it's your fault for being too long.
It really is. Like when you start thinking about your review while you're watching the movie. It means that there is something that has taken you out of it in some way, shape, or form. The best cinematic experiences for me are the ones where it's like, oh yeah, I forgot we're writing something or we're podcasting or whatever. Like afterwards, I'm just breathless, going like, oh shit, now how do I process this? Yeah.
Hey, so before we go to spoilers, the very handsome J. Jack Sabbath in our live chat says, now I want to see War for the Planet of the Apes just for the Jar Jar. So, J. Jack, you should go see it and then report back and tell us what you think of that character.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. You'll know this character when you see the movie. I think you both know who I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's not a
for
mystery.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, Jar Jar didn't come to mind, but I know what you mean by like a tonal mismatch. And I think I know what they were going for. I just think they kind of turned that knob a little too far. Well, maybe a lot too far for you, but definitely a little bit too far for me. Because in some spots, I'm like, what are they? I kind of think I know what they're trying to do, because the movie is rather dark, right? I mean, this is a pretty bleak story, a bleak movie, and I think that I just wonder if there's studio, shenanigans going on here. Like, oh, you need to lighten it up a little bit. Like, can we have one character that is, that people can maybe relate to and kind of take us away from that stuff? And I hate that, but it almost feels like that's what happened here.
Even if it's not studio interference itself, I think that it was course correcting something that didn't need to be course corrected. I think the previous film, I think the middle one was probably my favorite. And I feel like that film really enjoyed being in sort of the gray area. You had apes and you had humans, and you had this story that, obviously there were antagonist characters and there were protagonist characters, but the film never definitively came down as much on one side or the other. And it lets you sort of see that, everyone is to fault and everyone is a champion and all of these different things. Whereas this film sort of course corrects that. And to me, it put a lot of the sympathy on one side, making the other side more of an antagonistic force. And part of that means getting out of that gray area, and comedy is a way to do that. I feel like they fixed a problem that didn't need to be fixed with that character and with the tone.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about that more, and also the point you made, Will, about one side versus the other, kind of the balance in this movie. I agree with you. I think it's out of balance. It's almost like they weren't even considering going for a balance at any point when they got to this movie. But we'll talk about that a little bit.
I think now is a good time to go ahead and open that can of spoilers, because we're running a little long anyway. So we're just going to do it. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off the wound of spoilerage. So this is the part where I awkwardly talk for several seconds to give you time to mute the show. If you're listening live, come on back in 10, 15 minutes. If you're listening on digital tape delay, feel free to use the show/time index to skip ahead to plugs as needed. You don't want to miss those. But guys, spoilers are officially fair game. Where do you want to start?
We kept tap dancing around Jar Jar. We should maybe start there.
Do it.
Yeah. So this is a character named Bad Ape. And he is the other character that talks in the film. Caesar pretty much does nothing but talk, whereas most of the other apes use either mostly sign language, some grunting, or the occasional just the occasional word here or there. Bad Ape talks a lot. He is the comedic character who is always there for a punchline because he doesn't understand something or he's not quite sure. And but I think the part that really bothered me about him, and the thing that made me think of Jar Jar Binks so much, this particular character would do this thing where he would stumble randomly off into a particular area, randomly and accidentally, and then it would be while doing that he would fall into a thing, and that would be the thing that the people needed to find. And that's what happened with Jar Jar Binks in that first movie. He would go out on the battlefield and he would kill everything by being a klutz. Bad Ape kind of did that here, just without the death count. That was annoying to me. In fact, I went as far, I walked out of that going just God, that character is obnoxious, and really brought the film down quite a bit for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Will. I think it took me out of the movie a little bit. I did like the idea of that character, though. Here's a character that was brought up in a public zoo, right? And so he had a lot of human interaction that maybe some of the other apes did not. And so he was kind of a totally different personality and mindset. I like that. I like that concept, bringing it into the story. I just think they made it too much of a like you said, like a klutzy comic, you know, I'll say the stupid thing and it'll end up being the smart thing kind of thing. And like I said, at the beginning, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to see what they're going to do with this character. And they really didn't do anything interesting with him. And that's too bad. Can we talk about the balance here? I think this is,
yeah.
I don't know if the series was ever supposed to us to have any in this. If you just watch this movie, you would say that this movie wanted the audience to have zero empathy for humans, right? Zero empathy. There is no empathy on the human side in this movie. Whereas, if I recall, in the first two movies, I think there was a little bit of that, at least. I don't remember, but exactly. But
and they actually set up some opportunities in this film where they three times introduced a human character that I thought was going to maybe be sort of the sympathetic one. On the other side, you have the crossbow guy, who I was expecting to maybe there be something there. The Woody Harrelson character, once you learn more about him, and then the little girl that's with them. And I think the first two ended up just their storylines were really more for function than it was for arc. And that was disappointing for me as someone who wanted to see a little bit more of that balance. And then you had the girl, who definitely was a much more sympathetic character, but she was incredibly underutilized too. Like, when I think about like what role she actually had in this film and in this story, I'm kind of drawing a blank as to like what she was doing there. Like, if we cut her character out entirely, how dramatically would that have changed this story arc? And I don't think it would have.
Well, to some degree, though, I think it would, though, because she was the carrier for the new souped up virus that like prevents humans from speaking. It was her doll that ends up getting picked up, and Woody Harrelson has it, and that's why he can't talk. And then things start falling apart. They don't have, you know. So, I mean, I think if you remove her, you'd have to find a way of still passing that disease on somehow, if that's still going to be part of the story and the, you know, how it affects how things play out at the end.
I would even go as far. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just saying. I mean, that was kind of an interesting thing, but I mean, they just kind of explained it early on. I think Woody Harrelson did the explanation. Said some of the people who survived developed this other mutation of the disease where they slowly, you know, lose the ability to talk and be human and all that stuff. And I thought, oh, that sucks. I mean, I didn't necessarily need to see how it happened, like that the girl was the carrier, because like, okay, that's great that the girl's the carrier, but yeah, I mean, the girl was interesting. I mean, man, at one point, like you see she came across like the character like 11 in Stranger Things. She had a big 9 on her shirt, so I'm like, I made a joke. Yeah. I made a joke. I'm like, oh yeah, she's 2 less than 11. Perfect. She even kind of looked like her a little bit, and by the end of the movie, I felt the same as you. Well, I'm like, I'm not sure that character needed to be in the story. She was the only human I think we were meant to have empathy for. Okay. Otherwise, there wasn't a human in the movie that I didn't really want to see wiped out. So
yeah,
she's kind of the hope of the human race, right? Because that's the whole thing in the story. She's Nova, which is new in some language, I'm sure. She's the new thing that, and you know, I imagine when they continue with this movie series, which I think they're going to do. I don't think it's stopping here. I think they're going to explore this world a little bit more. I think you may see, you know, her morph into like some other race of humans that thrive somewhere else in the world.
Nova, no disassemble.
You know, I'd even go as far as to say I think that the story arc then with you know, Woody Harrelson also contracting the disease and losing his voice or losing his ability to speak and all of that, being an extension of the girl, I think even that didn't really do anything for the story, because everything sort of wraps up there in that, you know, like the big fight thing that happens. It's almost like an afterthought. Like, you know, Caesar goes in like, oh man, I'm gonna go do Woody Harrelson, like have this particular fight or what have you. Just like, oh, okay, well that happened. All right, now to go do other things. It felt like such a petering out of a story. I think you could have still done that particular arc. I just don't think that they did it in a very effective way.
I think they were going for the whole like, oh no, the humans commander is no longer in the picture, and now the military force that's there is falling apart because the chain of command is now broken. And I see what they're trying to do, but I agree with you. Well, I think I don't know. There are other ways to maybe do that without trying to shoehorn this girl into the film. You could have just had him fucking die. Like maybe a missile from one of the helicopters just like blows him up and he's gone. You know what I mean? You can still accomplish that.
And Sammy in chat makes a really good point. Nova was the girl played by Linda Harrison in the original Planet of the Apes, the mute one that was there with Charlton Heston. So that's the connection there. So I get why they needed to have the mute story there. It's just, I mean, I feel like in some ways maybe they were hampered by trying to connect too many dots. Like the thing where it's like, well, this is the prequel, so we have to explain everything. You could have I mean, I think I don't need to necessarily know why the character was mute in the first one because of this movie. Like, I didn't need that dot necessarily connected for it to be a compelling prequel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And even though they connected the dot, you have to remember that first movie to remember that there was a character named Nova. And maybe it's just been too long since I saw that movie. And, you know, didn't really remember. I didn't remember the significance of that. But now that I do, thanks, Sammy or Sam, you know, I'll you know, it does hold a little bit more significance. But one thing I was going to mention, the point where the movie really bogged down to me was really the whole camp scene, the whole military. As soon as they arrived at the military camp, the movie came to like a grinding halt.
And that's what I was alluding to earlier. It's that whole scene where all the apes are like building the wall and they're all like, look down, look down. Like, it was totally, I don't know, like a Les Mis Planet of the Apes thing. And, you know, they brought Jar Jar in to try and make that a little more fun at some points, but it just stuck in the muck.
When I think about the actual plot beats that happen in that third act, like what happens to Caesar and how it happens to him and what happens to all of the characters, like if I were to just look at it on paper, I could say, okay, that makes sense. But I feel like the way it worked out in actuality on screen was way less impactful than it could have been. It was sort of I mean, to me, it was just like one misstep after the other. I hated the last third of this movie. And that's not where you want to end like a good trilogy. You know, yeah, they're going to make more of them, but you know, it's like this is the closure of the Caesar trilogy. So I wanted it to end much more powerfully than it did.
I actually, there was a long stretch of it I didn't care for, but the very end when the actual action kicked in again, when the camp became under siege, and that only lasted maybe 10 minutes or so of the movie. I didn't mind that whole part to the very end. I thought it was pretty good. If they had just shortened up that whole camp exposition, like prison, you know, it was very cliche, like prison camp drama at that point, like Escape from Stalag 13 with apes, you know, and they really could have shortened it. We've seen that all before. But when the helicopters came in and started doing their thing, I thought that action was pretty compelling, and I thought the special effects in that scene were on the, you know, the money that they spent was on the screen, and I thought it looked really good.
Yeah, definitely. And they even like try to take it one step further beyond just the military action. Oh wait, now we've got this giant avalanche that just comes down and like wipes out like both sets of conflicty humans, right? So that really sort of sets the stage. The question I'm trying to figure out is, were those the only humans like really left at this point? There was a comment that one of the military characters, or no, was it the Winter? I think it was Winter who said like the last of the humans up north are coming down to battle or whatever. So I mean, were these the only humans left, or are we thinking there's like lots more out there somewhere?
I mean, this is only 15 years later, and they really only know about this one particular region. So realistically, there's probably other pockets of humans. But what we saw here are these two connected ones, this outpost and then the bigger outpost that came to raid this one, got whittled down. So I would imagine this is not the end of humanity, but this is the beginning of the end for humanity.
But sadly, Caesar is dead. Caesar is gone. Do you think we will see him show up in flashback next movie, or might we see him as a ghost? And one of the apes exclaims, "Great Caesar's ghost!"
Wow, there you go. I think that has to happen. I think that has to happen. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We'll probably end up seeing Caesar a little bit. I don't know if they want to let Andy Serkis go completely from this series. He's he's given some great performances here as Caesar. So yeah, we'll see what they do to fill that gap. The other thing is, I'd have to go back and look at the timeline of the original movies, because I know this movie kind of leads into the the original Planet of the Apes, but I think some of those movies actually go back before the Planet of the Apes original movie, also in the chronology. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the chronology lays out.
Well, I'm thinking they're just redoing the original movies. I don't know that they're necessarily trying to tie these directly into the start of the old movies.
I'd be interested in seeing that, because I think that as it stays right now, you've got a chronology of films that really only takes the Tim Burton one and makes it non-canon, right?
Right.
Because that one was trying to retell the original Planet in kind of a different weird way. But as it stands right now, you can just plop this trilogy in front of the 5 Planet of the Apes movies, however many there were, and have have that as a series. That said, they've got to go somewhere with the next one if they're going to do another one. Without Caesar, without Andy Serkis, I have a feeling the next step for them would actually be, I wouldn't mind this, a remake of the first one. I think that they've introduced the character of Nova for a reason. They wanted, I don't think they wanted to remind us of her because of the last one. I think they're going to try to connect that to whatever comes next, and they have to include that character because that's a character that's part of that story. So I would not be surprised if we see a remake, and
maybe not the next one, but because I think there's still some story to tell of how these apes kind of develop their society, right? In that new location that they're at, and that sounds kind of boring. So I imagine they'll throw some kind of plot on top of that, some kind of dramatic plot. Who knows what it is? Maybe an uprising of another band of.
Should we keep slaves or should we not? Story,
right?
Yeah.
They had the militant ape clan too in the original movie, if I remember right. So yeah, there's something going on there. Yeah, it's called Game of Apes. Is the next one.
There you go, Game of Trees.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are getting to the end of our time together. We have something in the oven baking right now on time delay. So unfortunately, we have a bit of a hard stop coming up. So let's go ahead, shift into some very quick plugs as we look to wrap the show. We talked last week, and we were kind of half kidding, kind of half not. Will and I were on this whole like Steven Universe riff, and then like Chris, the sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast, was jumping in the chat about actually doing a Movie Bears podcast Steven Universe special. You know what? We heard from you guys that was something you wanted us to do as well. So we're going to do it. We're recording tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to be geeking out about all things Steven Universe. Will, Chris, and myself will be chatting about some of our favorite episodes. But for those who may not have seen the show yet, maybe you've heard about it, you're not sure why it's so great, why people are talking about it, we're going to talk spoiler-free about some of the really awesome themes and things we love about that show to maybe help you make a decision whether you want to check it out before we dive into some of our favorite episodes. So, Jim, I know you don't really watch Steven Universe. It's my hope.
I don't yet.
It's my hope that someday you will let the love and feelings from Steven Universe into your heart. We'll see. But Will, I'm very excited to chat about this with you and Chris tomorrow night.
I've been watching episodes all day, just nerding out about the idea of this. Yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Indeed.
My cold, empty heart maybe someday will open up to the wonders of Steven's universe.
Well, you know what it is, Jim? I think you've only seen the silly, like some of the silliness of Steven Universe in the early episodes. Like later on, it's very balanced with some really complex, like emotional, like make you ugly cry your eyes out stuff, which is...
It's like a long form story, and if you've only seen the first couple of episodes, it's like watching kind of like the stuff before the opening credit crawl, which is usually a little lighter and kind of introducing the character stuff. Once the plot kicks in, like it is one of the most sharply written and sharply forecasted long form stories I've seen. Like nothing is just kind of randomly thrown in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I really think deep down you'd have to stick with it a little bit, Jim, but I know you don't like animated stuff much, but the way you were talking about Your Name earlier, I'm thinking like, my God, Steven Universe is so much more complex, like emotional wise, than Your Name was. So I'm like, maybe he'll watch it someday. I don't know. But anyway, we'll nerd out about it tomorrow, Will. I just wanted to let people know 6 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. Tune in, Same Movie Bear podcast channel /time. See you there. Let's go to Will. Will, what have you got this week?
My original plug was going to be a ghost story. And then just as I got closer and closer to the episode, like I realized I just needed to put that in my top 3. So my backup plug is a cool little movie called Take Me. It's directed by Pat Healy, who stellar dude. He directed this film that I keep kind of going back to called oh shit, now it's out of my brain. It's one of those things where you just get to the end of the episode and you're just like oh my God.
Is it like, the one where they keep ramping up the money?
Yeah, it's called Cheap Thrills. I kept going like Cheap Thrills. And it's him and Ethan Embry, and they're kind of taking more and more riskier dares. But that's not Take Me. Take Me written, directed, and starring Pat Healy as a dude that does like people pay him to take them captive, like, oh, I want to stop eating junk food, so you're going to lock me in a chair and force me to eat junk food for 8 hours so that I'm aversion therapy to it. He gets a call from someone who asks him to do a longer weekend one, and against his better judgment, he decides to do it, and then things go off the rails and get kind of weird. So this is a really funny movie. It's dark. It kind of keeps pushing the limits, but it's not terribly fucked up or anything like that. Not a great movie, but it's a good one. I enjoyed it. It's called Take Me, and it's streaming right now.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Will. Jim, what have you got this week?
I was going to plug The Lifeguard, but we had fun watching that movie.
You should have.
Well, all right. Well, I will then. We went back, and because The Hero was out in movie theaters this week, we wanted to go back and see an old Sam Elliott movie. So we watched this movie called Lifeguard from 1976 or something like that, Brad. I think it was 76.
Yeah. Something like that.
It's like this thing predated Baywatch, but it is totally, you could see like some of the seeds of Baywatch were planted. This guy, Sam Elliott, plays, I forget the guy's name, Rich. I think his name is Rich. And he's a lifeguard. He's approaching 30. He's like 30 something years old, but he's like one of these guys who can't, he's forever like reliving his youth as this lifeguard on a beach in California. And just, there's some romantic stuff that goes on. He's kind of in a love triangle. There's some, if you love shirtless dudes, this is the movie to watch.
Shirtless, hairy dudes.
It doesn't pull many punches in some of the sex scenes, which is pretty interesting. Doesn't show peen really, but it gets pretty down and dirty and steamy. I liked it because it was just like one of those like old school movies. It's not trying to be overly funny. I wouldn't say it's a comedy. I would say it's a drama, but it's got comedic elements. If you like Sam Elliott, want to see a young Sam Elliott who looks more like, if Brad came down to watch, he's like, what is this? Is this what's his name from Knight Rider? What was his name?
David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, no, it wasn't David Hasselhoff. Magnum. He's like, is this like?
Oh, Tom Selleck. Yeah.
Is this like a Tom Selleck movie? I said no, but all the guys look like Tom Selleck because it was, right around that time where all the dudes had the porn mustaches and the long hair. It was cool. It's called Lifeguard. Check it out with Sam Elliott.
Yeah, definitely a fun plug, Jim. And I got to tell you, I think I vaguely remember my mom watching this movie as a kid. She had like a whole love affair in her head with Sam Elliott. Like she was totally in love with that guy. And so as we're watching the movie, like parts of it were feeling vaguely familiar. And it got me thinking, because there were like 100 hairy-chested men with mustaches on that beach. I'm wondering if that's where my love of mustaches and hairy chest maybe genesis. Maybe there was some pre-Commander Riker like bear genesis going on because of this movie as a kid. I don't know. But if you like bear flesh, if you like mustaches, you should definitely see this movie. It's good on top of those things. So J Jack in the chat says he's writing down the title. I hope you like it. Good pick, Jim. Good stuff. All right. Well, guys, that wraps us for this week. Before we say our final goodbyes, Jim, where can people find you online if they want to chat movies with you?
Find me on Twitter. Feel free to, follow me, and I'll follow you back on Twitter at JJP Out West. Follow me there. I post more and more. I'm starting to, tweet movie-related tweets, and I like kind of joining the Twitter discussions more than the Facebook discussions these days. But yeah, find me there at JJP Out West.
All right, awesome. Will, how about you?
Check me out on Twitter at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook, William Lindis, and I'm on Letterboxd, also William Lindis. That's a great place to connect and see all of them movies we've been talking about and watching and stuff. So yeah, connect with me any of those three places.
All right, awesome. And for me, you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm probably the Brad Harris that has bear friends in common with you. So that should be pretty easy. You can also find me on Twitter at the handle on your screen. But if you're listening audio only, it's at iBradPro. Feel free to shoot me a message, DM if you want to use the Twitter lingo, or just tweet at me. Would love to chat with you guys. That is it for this week. We will see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody. And for those of you who are into Steven Universe, don't forget, I'll plug it again. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Tune on in. Good night, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.